Oh, geez, I'm making another video. All right. Yeah, well, don't mind me. I was just listening to the Breakfast Club soundtrack. So point of view. Well, I guess I'll talk about the Breakfast Club for a moment. Like in the Breakfast Club, which maybe some of you have seen, or maybe it's too R-rated for you or something, I guess, because of foul language. We all have a point of view, right? The characters in that story all had different points of view, and they got to learn each other's points of view as the story progressed, and got to see what they were kind of all about, rather than just being labeled by the way that you look or act, right? So, point of view can be important because it can show us a little bit more into the minds of the other people that are out there. So, we're going to be looking at some point of view things, dealing with this essay on should there be violence in movies or should there be less violence in movies. We're going to kind of look at some of the point of view differences here to help guide us. So, without further ado, I'm going to continue to dance to this and then show you in a moment. Yeah. Ooh, what a nice, funky, fresh beat. All right, so we're looking at author's point of view and purpose here when we're looking at these violence in the movie essays, right? There's two different kinds of essays that we have here that we're going to be looking at, and they both have different points of view. First things first is we have to examine the author's purpose, right? The author's purpose can be either entertain, to persuade, or to inform the reader about something. Writing that has a clear purpose is usually advertisements, speeches, personal essays, that sort of thing will have a clear purpose in their writing. So the author's purpose is the intention of the writer. It's to make sure that we know what the author is writing about and why, right? Authors sometimes don't have purposes in their writings, though. We could find that with poetry and fictional text. They might just be writing for fun, right? They want a nice little sounding poetry thing, the flowers in the garden, that sort of thing. In order to recognize an author's purpose, right, we may have to look at the text a little bit closer. When we do recognize an author's purpose, that will give us a clearer focus for our reading. And some elements that can reveal an author's purpose might be the genre or the type of thing they're writing about, the subject, the title, maybe the imagery and word choice a little bit, right? So as we look through this, we're going to kind of see what the different purposes a writer might have for writing, right? As I said before, you can entertain, persuade, inform, or maybe a combination of those. And then there's a little bit of a difference, though, between an author's purpose and an author's point of view. An author's purpose refers to what the author intends to do, the reason why he or she is writing. The author's point of view is their perspective. So they have a purpose, right? They're writing this because they want to inform us or maybe entertain us, make us laugh or something. But their point of view is what they feel about on the topic. And as we're noticing with this, there are two perspectives here in this essay. We have one perspective that says violence in movies is fine and dandy, and the other one that says, no, it's not good, right? It's awful. So the author's point of view can influence us a little bit, right? When we read something, we might be influenced a little bit by that, and we can see through a little bit of their emotional response. The things that they say could show a little bit of their emotions in there, right? So how do we find the author's point of view? Well, if we look through the essay, The Violence in Movies, Cinematic Craft or Hollywood Gone Too Far, immediately the title alerts us that this section is going to be made up of two different points of view, right? Violence in the movies, cinematic craft, or Hollywood gone too far, right? We could tell already that person is probably going to say that Hollywood's gone too far, right? So we're looking at some word choices here. What purposes might an author choose specific language? They choose this specific language to show an opinion or belief, right? Maybe to clarify a point of view, or maybe to get us to feel more emotional, right? If we read, oh no, Hollywood's gone too far, right? We might be thinking, oh, we have to do something, right? The author uses adjectives and descriptive words such as action-packed, brutal, mass destruction. This helps to heighten our emotional response, right? Murders are not only committed on screen, but they're often brutal, right? Destruction takes place on a massive scale. Those are things that are going to get us to think a little bit closer about this and maybe go, maybe this person has the right idea. Maybe they don't, right? The counterpoint article doesn't really make use of emotional or figurative language. The counterpoint argument is the article, is the second one, saying that, you know what, violence in movies isn't that bad, right? He supports his opinions with facts and statistics, though, which is good. So he doesn't sit there and go, oh, it's violent and everyone's dying and we're screaming. Instead, he's like, according to this, according to that, according to this psychology professor, according to the U.S. Bureau of Justice and Statistics, right? Which is a little bit more, it's less emotional, but more factual, right? Which is just fine. And the author of the Counterpoint Argument, the second article, acknowledges and responds to conflicting evidence and viewpoints by taking an idea that takes an opposing view. The idea that exposure to violence in movies is not a risk factor for violent behavior. He uses that as an example many people can relate to in order to show why this opposing viewpoint should be considered incorrect, right? He's basically saying the other person is wrong because I'm right, because violence in movies is not a risk factor for violent behavior, according to the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, or whatever it says, right? He also makes a mention, this is part of our explanation part when you're doing your evidence-based paragraphs, you'll be explaining things. He states that just because he'd always ridden a bicycle without a helmet and has never had a head injury doesn't mean there's a link between not wearing a bicycle helmet and increasing your risk of getting a head injury. In other words, he's just because he's always ridden a bike without a helmet, right, doesn't mean that there's not a link between, wearing a bicycle helmet and increasing your risk of injury. So basically, wear a helmet, kids. But he's making that example to show that there's no links here in this, which is that a good argument, a bad argument? I don't really know. But as we look through here, we're going to find out more about this, and we just have to dig deeper, right? Because we have to see what the author's purpose is, and we have to know a little bit about their point of view. Alrighty then. And then let's go ahead and dive in together. Yes.